Welcome to Two Gay Tuesdays on QueerPublicRadio.com. On Two Gay Tuesdays, we will discuss news and events happening in our world. Much of it will be related to our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning, intersex, and allied communities. Our goal is to inform, enlighten, and have some fun along the way. Join Kali and Tom and occasional guests as we explore our world in hopes of making it a better place. Most of our content will show a great need for more understanding and love involving the treatment of our fellow human family members. All human family members. On with the show. Hey, everybody. Hi, Kali. How you doing?
Aloha, y'all. Hey, Tom. How are you today?
I am fine on this day, this Tuesday, this October 23rd, 2012, where it is currently 8:01 p.m. on the Eastern Coast in the Eastern Time Zone. It's currently 7:01 p.m. in the Central Time Zone, and it is 5:02 p.m. on the Pacific Coast. What is it in Hawaii, Kali?
It would be 2:02 here in the beautiful Hawaiian Islands.
Sometimes I just think you just need to be a tourist guide for Hawaii.
Well, if somebody would pay me, I'd do it for sure. Oh, boy.
So this is our fourth Two Gay Tuesday show. I mean, even Chewy got excited about that.
Our mascot there.
Yes. Goodness gracious. But hello and welcome to the Two Gay Tuesdays show. You know, I'm going to just move on with it here. We got a quote of the day is our first, top of the segment, the next thing that's supposed to come up here during the show. And today, I kind of figured the quote of the day ought to kind of reflect on, recent news. And the recent news that we lost an outspoken Democratic politician by the name of Jordan McGovern. And, he was 90 years of age, in this day and time. Many speak the word liberal as if that's a bad thing, And George McGovern is a perfect example of a righteous liberal with intentions that included solving the world hunger problem. And so I thought it'd be nice to put a quote. One of his quotes that I liked was that he said, "I'm fed up to the ears with old men dreaming up wars for young men to die in." Yep, that kind of George McGovern. Thought that was pretty cool. George Stanley McGovern. Yep, that was his name. And son of a gun here, where is my sound clip of him? I have a sound clip for you. I was supposed to have one anyway. Let me see here. See if
we should let the people know that he was a historian, an author, a U.S. representative, a U.S. senator, and the Democratic Party presidential nominee in the 1972 presidential election.
And I found it, the audio clip I actually had it in the right place. I just hadn't loaded it up into the correct catalog, blah, blah, blah. That's a long story. Anyway, so here's a little audio clip about George McGovern that I heard that came from the Associated Press. Awesome little, short little clip, about 2.5 minutes in length.
George Stanley McGovern was a congressman, senator, and one-time Democratic presidential nominee. The plain-spoken son of a Methodist pastor, he was born in 1922 in the small farm town of Avon, South Dakota. Never a showman, McGovern displayed his well-documented humility and patriotism at his 90th birthday celebration in Washington.
I've always believed that we live in the greatest country on earth.
Spurred by the 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor, McGovern volunteered for the Army Air Forces, where he went on to earn the Distinguished Flying Cross. The outspoken liberal became a fixture in politics for decades, but suffered one of the most crushing defeats in presidential history. In his race for president in 1972 against Richard Nixon, McGovern promised to end the Vietnam War and cut defense spending drastically.
I want to say here this morning that deep in my soul, I'm convinced that people of this country have had enough of Richard Nixon, and we're going to have a Democratic victory.
But his choice of Missouri Senator Thomas Eagleton as his running mate proved to be his campaign's undoing. When it was revealed that Eagleton had undergone electroshock therapy for depression, McGovern promised to stick by him. But days later, he convinced Eagleton to withdraw from the ticket. After some searching, Eagleton was replaced with Sergeant Shriver. The two went on to carry only Massachusetts and the District of Columbia in the election. McGovern later quipped, "For many years, I wanted to run for the presidency in the worst possible way. And last year, I sure did." After 3 terms in the Senate, in 1980, McGovern was defeated in his bid for a 4th. But in the years that followed, the former senator became a sought-after speaker and an author of numerous books. He continued to champion issues related to nutrition and hunger, and he received several awards and honors, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2000. McGovern's wife Eleanor died of heart disease in 2007. They had been married for 64 years and had 4 daughters and a son. Jerry Bodlander, Associated Press, Washington.
So there you have it. George McGovern. I thought that was an interesting little piece on him. Kind of said some things there. I was like, oh, really? Wow. Yeah.
Yes, it's time for the history segment on Queer Public Radio.
Yay for the history segment.
On October the 20th of 1969, the National Institutes of Mental Health released a report based on a study led by psychologist Dr. Evelyn Hooker. The report urges states to repeal sodomy laws. On October the 20th of 1987, over 50 ACT UP members were arrested during an act of civil disobedience protesting President Reagan's lack of action in the AIDS epidemic. Another demonstration of about 150 people was held across the street from the United Nations building during the UN General Assembly first debate on AIDS. On October the 21st of 1992, the University of Iowa, in Iowa City School Board approved a policy to extend spousal insurance benefits to same-sex couples and unmarried heterosexual couples. In 1993, Yale University announced that it would extend spousal health benefits to domestic partners of gay and lesbian faculty members, administrators, and managers. On October the 22nd of 1986, U.S. Surgeon General C. Everett Koop advised that sex education that includes information on both gay and straight relationships would help prevent the spread of AIDS. On October the 23rd of 1993, in Helena, Montana, the state Supreme Court ruled that transvestism is not a sufficient reason to deny a father joint custody of his 3-year-old child. On October the 24th of 1987, Elizabeth Kirby Llewellyn was named the new president of Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays at the organization's 6th International Convention in Washington, D.C. And finally, on October the 26th of 1990, a U.S. Army colonel was discharged and sentenced to 90 days in Leavenworth, Kansas for appearing in drag at an AIDS benefit and kissing another man. If you know of an event to include, please use the contact page on queerpublicradio.com and tell us about it. Tom?
Wow, I'm impressed. Wow, that well said and done. I didn't know that about C. Everett Koop. That's awesomeness. The folks over at LGBTHistoryMonth.com have been doing this every single day. They do this. They've been doing this for years. I forget how many years they've been doing it, but they've been doing it for years. Where the month of October, which October is LGBT History Month, they do a LGBTQIA icon, a different one every day. They do a little blurb. So I on the last show, I believe it was, I put together a mashup for you, an LGBT history mashup kind of thing from a few of the people from the previous week. Well, I did it again this week. So I got a little mashup for you here, a little sound clip, about a minute and a half or so, from the 4 people that I picked out of this last week that they featured. And it was Ershad Manji, Christine Jorgensen, Don Lemon, and Arthur Lawrence. And here's the clip to tell you a little bit more about those 4 LGBT historical icons that were prominent in the last week over there at LGBTHistoryMonth.com.
Once described as Osama bin Laden's worst nightmare, Irshad Manji is an award-winning author, feminist, and advocate for Islamic reform. Christine Jorgensen was the first nationally known transgender American. She used her fame to speak out on behalf of transgender people. Don Lemon is a primetime national news anchor. He received an Edward R. Murrow Award, one of the most prestigious honors in broadcast journalism.
Arthur Lawrence was a Tony Award-winning playwright, director, and screenwriter. He wrote the scripts for West Side Story, Gypsy, and La Cage aux Folles. For information about the 31 lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender icons, visit LGBTHistoryMonth.com.
Now we're talking. That was special. Be sure and visit their site, LGBTHistoryMonth.com, because, all you heard is a short little audio portion of that. It's actually a video on their site, and, you can select any of the people. They list all 30 people for the whole month up there on the sidebar there, and you can click on any of them and listen to that particular one. So check it out, LGBTHistoryMonth.com, to see all the wonderful LGBTQI icons that they're showcasing this October 2012 LGBT History Month.
Well, now it's time for my comment of the day, folks, and I've titled this Another Sign of Stupidity in the Republican Party. I want to tell you about something offensive that happened to me this week, and I'm almost 100% sure that you will all approve of the way I handled it. So here goes my story. After a long day of work and having completed my weekly shopping trip to the grocery store and the pet store to pick up supplies for my, and I use this in quotes, children, Sebastian and Mr. Tiggers, who are my cats, I decided that I would go and check my mail. Well, apparently it is legal to accost me with the usual bills and junk mail, as well as the Vote For Me advertising sent to me by one Linda Lingle, or as I like to call her, Larry Lingle, sponsored by the Hawaiian Republican Party. Now, I kind of thought to myself, how could this be possible? You see, anyone who knows me knows that I am anti-organized religion. I'm pro-women's rights. I'm pro-choice. I'm pro-minorities' rights. I'm pro-volunteerism. I'm pro-charity. A Democrat. Oh, and not to mention a lifelong lover of the ocean, the trees, the Aina, or land, and, of course, the planet. Not to mention, oh, yes, I am a gay man who's been with the same black man for nearly 19 years. So in response to this offensive literature, I went to the Hawaii Republican Party's front door. At their website, www.gophawaii.com, I asked them how it could possibly fit in with a political party that has gone so fundamentally to the right in its views on many issues. A party that hates women, minorities, the planet, LGBTQIA people. A party that hates you if you are not white, rich, and part of the old boys network.
What would you do with a brain if you had one?
I told them, save a tree and not to send me any more trash, and that I could not or would not, in good conscience, vote for any person that endorsed hate, bigotry, or worse yet, stupidity. I told them they would not waste me any more of my time, and then I closed the letter with the following words: Go Obama, forward. As a gay man, I highly encourage everyone to vote. It's your right, it's your duty, and this time around, it's so vitally important. Onward and forward.
Yeah, that's right. I agree wholeheartedly. Yes.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
Oh, of course, it's time for my thought for the day.
And I know y'all just going to really like it, too.
Speaking of the Postal Service, or the mail, I just didn't want to use the word mail right off the top because some people just have a different four-letter spelling that comes to their mind first off. So, so I thought I'd better preface it with Postal Service when I said mail. From here on out, when you hear me speaking in this segment, when I say the word mail, I'm talking about the Postal Service mail. Okay? Just want to make that clear up front. So, I didn't want Kali to feel all alone in his mail debacle. So, I thought I'd share one of my own. In my mailbox, just a few days ago, I found a 12-page newspaper. And I'm going, well, looky here, something to read when I'm on the throne, you know? Cool. So, you know, as I looked at it and I noticed everything in it was political, and I'm going, whoa, you know, because on the front it didn't appear to be a political publication, but when you started reading the stuff, you realized that's all it was. And then I noticed, I said, wait a minute now, these are all Republicans, you know? So I tossed it, you know, on the floor. But when I tossed it down, the back cover page was showing on this thing. And I noticed that, which I hadn't made it that far, you know, to the back. You know, I got a couple pages into it, tossed it, you know. But on the back, I could see in large bold lettering at the top, you know, that it said 2012 Catholic Voter Guide. And, of course, that made the wheels in my brain start spinning. And I'm thinking to myself that sure sounds a bit like it's against the agreement that they signed when they obtained their not-for-profit tax license. I think that's what a lot of people forget here, is that when these churches don't just automatically, boom, click, you wave a wand and they got, nonprofit status in the world. That's a legal process, and they got to sign forms, and they promise to adhere by these rules and all this kind of stuff, kind of thing. So, in order for a church to become a nonprofit and not have to pay income tax, they have to sign legal forms. A representative of that church has to sign legal forms stating that they're going to abide by the terms and agreements of being a nonprofit. But, of course, we know. We had Pulpit Sunday just a couple Sundays ago, and that's against the agreement that they signed off on. So it's obvious that, the signature isn't any more valid if it's a member of the clergy than if it's Joe Blow in the street. Come on, really. Well, despite the fact that some religious men can't be trusted, obviously, to abide by their signed and sworn legal agreements, they evidently, someone realizes it's not quite right, so they found a way around that. Because when I started to read the fine print on the back of this paper, the much smaller type at the bottom of the page, which at my age, I gotta go buy those $2.50 glasses so I can read type. Yeah, that's tough. So anyway, the organization that purchased the back page of the paper is actually a 501c4 nonprofit organization, and that particular type of nonprofit organization is allowed to be political in legislation, just like churches, but additionally in support or not supporting politicians. So it's only if they're a 501c3 that which is what most churches are, the vast majority. So guess who supplies all the funds for this 501c4 organization in Texas? It's a group of Catholic laymen, quote unquote, who formed this group. They specifically formed this 501c4 for this reason. Well, let me not put words in their mouth. They personally and practically state that they formed it for public education and advocacy. And they further state that their mission is to cultivate Catholic leaders who would promote and defend authentic Christian morals. The moral principles in the community, in the state, in the country, in order to safeguard and promote the common good of, what else? God's law. Yeah, the common good.
Well, Tom, I think it's time for the non-gay news.
You're getting better at that. It just doesn't sound the same.
I'm learning from the master.
It just doesn't sound the same on the telephone. The non-gay news. Yeah. There we go. I'm sorry. Do you remember the guy named Nathan Sproul?
Oh, how could you forget?
He was the quote-unquote political strategist in Florida, the most recent state that he was acting in. In Florida, that he actually was working for the Romney campaign, and he got caught and brought up on charges of voter fraud and or voter tampering. Yeah, he's currently facing an investigation. Through the developing investigation, it has come out that the consulting firm owned by Mr. Nathan Sproul was paid by the RNC, the Republican National Convention, a little over $415,000 last month alone. Of course, since the legal proceedings have started, now the RNC has nothing to do with Mr. Nathan Sproul or his company. But it appears that this guy, for years, has been jumping from state to state and pulling the same kind of stuff for quite some time. And and then he pulls out of the area, before he gets too hot or whatever, and moves along to another area. And he's been doing this for some time, and all of this time he's been doing all of this for the RNC. And now he finally gets caught, because there's been questionable circumstances in other states as well, now that he's been caught, especially that they look on things in a different light. But now, oh boy, that guy's a bad apple. The RNC just severed all ties with him. Interesting, huh? I thought so. I just thought I'd share that with you. Onward. It's known that Romney stands against rights for LGBT people. In August 2011, he signed the National Organization for Marriage's pledge to stand against marriage equality, or appoint Supreme Court justices who would also oppose marriage equality, and support an amendment to the United States Constitution that would block the federal government from ever recognizing marriages between gays and lesbians. It should also be noted that Romney won the endorsement of the violently anti-gay NOM after signing the pledge. It was later revealed that Romney also happens to be a major contributor to NOM. Oh, surprise, shock, gasp. And all this despite a 1994 interview in which he said he would be better than Ted Kennedy on gay rights. This week, Romney apparently believes that it should be up to the states to decide whether or not a spouse or child of gay and lesbian men or women should have the right to visit their loved ones in the hospital. He believes that being able to visit a dying spouse in the hospital is a privilege, not a right. Following mixed messages from Romney, yeah, right? Whew. Privilege. It's a privilege to visit your dying spouse in the hospital. Following mixed messages from Romney regarding his pledged support for the federal anti-gay marriage amendment, Romney campaign advisor Bay Buchanan, told BuzzFeed's, told BuzzFeed's Chris Geidner, Governor Romney also believes, consistent with the 10th Amendment, that it should be left to the states to decide whether to grant same-sex couples certain benefits, such as hospital visitation rights and the ability to adopt children. Really? Up to the states? One of those. That's a cop-out statement, my personal belief. In April 2010, recognizing the extraordinary miscarriage of justice and horrifying stories of families being split apart when fathers, mothers, husbands, and wives were barred from visiting one another in the hospital, Barack Obama signed an executive order mandating that any hospital that receives government funding, including Medicare and Medicaid, recognize the relationships between gays and lesbians. One of the inspirations for the signing of the bill was the story of Janice Langban, who, along with their adopted children, was barred from visiting her wife as she lay dying in a Florida hospital. I remember that story. They were going to go on a cruise, and her lover had an aneurysm, if I remember correctly, and they had to take her to the hospital. And even when they had all the legal documents and everything, they were from Washington State or California or somewhere on the Pacific Coast, and they had all the legal documents, the power of attorney, medical power of attorneys, and blah, 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 all of this stuff on and she had all that faxed to the hospital, and the hospital wouldn't even accept that. So the children and her wife never got to see her before she died. So anyway, by combining support for same-sex marriage and civil unions for same-sex couples that provide the same benefits as marriage, in a May 2012 poll showed that 62% of Americans support equal legal recognition of LGBT relationships. Yeah. It's way past time for this. Yeah. Oh, Colin, you got some sports news for us, huh?
I do indeed. It seems that sports in Canada is about to undergo a big transition. If the Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sport has anything to say about it, The group today, October the 23rd, released a report that makes numerous groundbreaking recommendations on gender expression and identity. It suggests that all levels of sports associations should let players compete as whatever gender they identify as. The 35-page report entitled Sport in Transition, Making Sport in Canada More Responsible for Gender Inclusivity will surely shake up the discussion around gender identity in a field that has recently found itself facing some tough decisions about how to classify gender. Just before London's 2012 Olympic Games, the International Olympic Committee drafted new regulations that set testosterone levels, not in athletes' self-identification, as the metric for determining gender. That decision was born out of controversy after South African runner Caster Semenya, I'm so sorry if I got that wrong, sex was called into question during a competition in Germany in 2009. The track and field governing body, which required her to undergo gender testing. This report is looking to ensure that that does not happen in Canada. This desire to definitely demarcate sex has proven to be scientifically elusive, the report reads, and I quote, of much more serious concern, it has also been harmful for some of the athletes ensnared by the ill-considered and usually inclusive testing. The report eliminates fairness as a barrier to stop intersex and transgender people from competing. The report argues that its Cold War suspicions that presumes athletes with variations of sex development are motivated by cheating and must be policed. It looks to dispel those suspicions by fostering a dialogue and inclusivity. A level playing field is an illusory concept to begin with, says the center's president and CEO, Paul Malia. He says there's no evidence of a professional athlete ever competing as the opposite gender to gain an advantage. He adds that sticking too rigidly to male and female creates arbitrary exclusion. The idea that such Juana man-style antics are actually happening leads to public shaming of the athlete, says Malia. The center's tactic isn't to establish a series of policy proposals, says Malia, but instead to encourage sport associations to welcome diversity, close quote, and hammer out their own proposals to take the report as a mirror of an inspiration. Malia and the center set up an expert panel to draft the report. 15 representatives from the medical, trans, sport, and women's communities came together to establish the document. The idea was to bridge the gap between professional organizations and a science-based approach to dealing with trans and intersex people in sports. 2 representatives were brought in from the Professional Curling League in Canada, an association that has dealt with these issues before. The panel also included a trans person as well as several doctors. One representative of the government also sat on the panel. Now that the report is out, Malia says they're looking to hold an open dialogue. The report can help inform all sports associations from the International Olympic Committee down to the local soccer association, says Malia. That's all part of the playground to the podium approach. Malia, however, is realistic. And he goes on to say, and I quote, "We understand what the status quo is," close quote, he says, noting he doesn't expect the Olympic Committee to wake up tomorrow and draft trans and intersex inclusive regulations. The debate, he says, is what's important and what will change minds. This can be mind-stretching idea for people, he says.
That's so great. I just love, I love having Collie around. I really do.
Boy, this is a lot more fun with a second person.
As most things in life are.
Oh, yeah. So let's see, onward with, because, we got a lot of news. We got a lot of news for you here in our gay news segment today. A whole heck of a lot of news in our gay news segment. We were a little shy on the non-gay news segment, but we're going to make up for it in the gay news segment. So onward we go with the gay news.
Well, Tom, we had a pretty big one happen over in Manhattan in the New York area. A divided federal appeals court in Manhattan struck down the Defense of Marriage Act on Thursday as unconstitutional, joining an appeals court in Boston in rejecting the law that defines marriage as between a man and a woman. The Supreme Court is expected to take up the case sometime next year. The Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals issued its 2-1 ruling only weeks after hearing arguments on a lower court judge's findings that the 1996 law was unconstitutional. The majority opinion written by Judge Dennis Jacobs rejected a section of the law that says marriage only means a legal union between one man and one woman as husband and wife, and that the word spouse refers only to a person of the opposite sex who is a husband or a wife. A federal appeals court in Boston earlier this year also found it unconstitutional. The issue is expected to be decided by the United States Supreme Court. James Essex, an attorney for the American Civil Liberties Union, called the ruling a watershed moment in the legal movement for lesbian and gay rights. And he goes on, and I quote, "It's fabulous news for same-sex couples in New York and other states," he said. Essex said the Second Circuit went farther than the appeals court in Boston by saying that when the government discriminates against gay people, the courts will presume that the discrimination is unconstitutional. He said the law was written so broadly it touches more than 1,000 federal laws. He said that homosexuals are not in a position to adequately protect themselves from the discriminatory wishes of the majority in public. He rejected arguments that the definition of marriage was traditional. Even if preserving tradition were in itself an important goal, DOMA is not a means to achieve it, he said. Judge Chester Straub dissented by saying that if the government was to change its understanding of marriage, I believe it is for the American people to do so. Courts should not intervene where there is a robust political debate because doing so poisons the political well. Imposing a destructive anti-majorian constitutional ruling on a vigorous debate, he said. The ruling came in a case brought by Edith Windsor. She sued the government in November of 2010 because she was told to pay $363,053 in federal estate tax after her partner of 44 years, Thea Spire, died in 2009. They were married in Canada in 2007. The law, which denies federal recognition of same-sex marriages and affirms the rights of states to refuse to recognize such marriages, was passed by Congress and signed by President Bill Clinton after it appeared in 1993 that Hawaii might legalize gay marriage. Since then, many states have banned gay marriage, but several have approved it, including Massachusetts and New York.
Goodness gracious.
Well, we have another story for you. This one out of Encino, California, on October the 17th of 2012, courtesy of the PRN Newswire. Legislative history was made on September the 23rd of 2012 when California Governor Jerry Brown signed AB 1217, a groundbreaking bill that amends the Uniform Parentage Act and affords same-sex couples conceiving children, surrogacy, the same parental rights and protections as other parents in the state. California has taken the unprecedented step of changing the legal definition of intended parent, and I put that in quotes, to be in another set of quotes here, an individual married or unmarried, making it legislatively illegal to discriminate against same-sex parents both before and after their children are born from surrogacy arrangements. California Assemblyman Felipe Fuentes sponsored the bill, which took 2 years to pass. The effort was spearheaded by Attorney Bill Handel and Karen, oh boy, I'm not going to get this last one right, Sinesu, co-owners of the Center for Surrogate Parenting, or CSP. The agency has been a pioneer in helping same-sex couples create families and was the first in the world to help a gay couple become parents via surrogacy 28 years ago.
Wow, thank you. Hey, Story, this was so bizarre because I didn't even hear about the incident happening, but all of a sudden I hear about the arrest that was made in the incident. An arrest was made in Philadelphia recently involving a transgender shooting. Yeah, I didn't hear nothing about the shooting until I saw this arrest was made posting. There was a shooting in Philadelphia that involved a trans woman and her 65-year-old mother. The trans woman needed surgery but survived the incident. Her mother did not survive her injuries. According to the Philadelphia Gay News publication, the 32-year-old man who was arrested was at a party being held at the victim's home. Several witnesses were present during the events that unfolded, I should say. The man who was arrested had a history of violent crime and is in custody at this time. I'm telling you, just unbelievable, huh? And, oh, wait, can you say, wow? Just last week, Holly told us about New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg donating $250,000 towards marriage equality. But now, wait, there's more. Now he's pledged another $500,000, another $500,000 to 3 different states, to $250,000 of it to Washington State for marriage equality, $125,000 of it in Maine for marriage equality, and another $125,000 in Minnesota to help with the ongoing marriage equality battles in those 3 states. Yeah, the pledges were made as matching contribution pledges. In other words, whenever someone makes a donation to any of these organizations that he has earmarked, the same amount will be taken from these pledge funds. So this will, in effect, double every contribution made to these marriage equality organizations in these states. So if the program is successful and everything works like it should, instead of getting $500,000 in these 3 states, they're actually going to be getting $1 million. The 3 groups that are involved in this program are, in Washington, it is Washington United for Marriage. And in Maine, it's Mainers United for Marriage. And in Minnesota, it's Minnesotans United for All Families. So there's your 3 groups, and, donate to them. Yeah, especially if you're in that state. Goodness gracious, and every dollar will be matched with the funds from Bloomberg. That's a pretty awesome thing. Yeah. While on this topic, I think it's appropriate to mention Nam because I haven't mentioned them much lately because in my mind they get far too much press already. But that doesn't mean, just because I haven't mentioned them that they haven't been hard at work. No, not at all. For example, they're behind an ad currently running in Maine on the television networks there. The ad features a heterosexual couple, an elderly heterosexual couple from Vermont, who happened to own a resort-type inn. And you might have heard about the case. The inn was sued by a lesbian couple because the inn refused to host their ceremony, their marriage ceremony, or their commitment ceremony, or whatever ceremony they were having. The inn wouldn't, and the inn frequently had weddings. Lots of people had their wedding celebration there at this inn. That was the big thing, one of their big things, one of their big draws. And so they got sued. And they're on the ad saying, oh, how terrible it was for us. We had to pay $30,000 in legal fees, and now we can't host weddings anymore. And this is an ad against marriage equality in Maine. Well, the problem with the whole ad, quite frankly, is, this man's legal issue, or this couple's legal issue with their inn, has nothing to do with marriage equality. Vermont has anti-discrimination laws in place, and it protects sexual orientation, and that's why the inn owners were having their legal problem. It had nothing whatsoever to do with marriage equality. But the advertisement certainly does nicely play the victim card, and Nam is well known for that. Deception at the hands of those with religious roots. For some reason, the term, quote-unquote, masters of deception comes to mind. Oh, goodness gracious, I'm telling you.
If it's not one thing, it's another. Here's another for you. Coming out of the closet is many things. A political act, a personal story, a rite of passage, and a holiday. National Coming Out Day marks the 1987 March on Washington for lesbian gay rights, and the anniversary is observed annually on October the 11th. Last Thursday, the USF Queer Alliance marked the occasion with an open mic night where students shared their own coming out stories. To come out of the closet means to accept one's sexual orientation or gender identity, as well as disclosing it to friends and family. So why the closet metaphor? Well, like a prolonged game of hide and seek, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community, or LGBT community, no longer wants to play. The game's rules are unfair. At the event, many brave dons swung those doors wide open. Mackenzie Mullen, a political coordinator of the Queer Alliance, sees coming out as an act of solidarity, she said. She said, it's important to acknowledge that not everyone has the ability to come out or wants to come out at this point, especially given that this is the start of a new school year. Mackenzie knows that USF, which I believe is the University of Southern Florida, for those who don't know what that is, has a lot of new queer folk, many of whom may still be questioning their identity. So events like this provide a positive, safe, and supportive way to come out. Genevieve Stone, a junior, came out as queer at last year's open mic night event. Sitting in the audience this year, she reflected on the experience and said, "It was really wonderful because it is really important to say who you are without any shame," she said. Shame is a common theme in coming out stories, not because there is something wrong with being LGBT, but because of cultural pressures to conform. Kate Nielsen, a queer-identified person, spoke about a burden she didn't want her mother to have. I am the daughter of a single Latina mother, and there are exceptions. My mother's idea of settling down is with a man, and my idea of settling down is meeting a nice woman someday. When Kat came out, her mother had to mourn the daughter she never had. In contrast, being out on campus is not an issue, and it's liberating. There are exceptions to our welcoming campus, which merit more events like this. Casey, a junior, spoke of an incident in the dorms his freshman year. A roommate got in a verbal argument with another out queer roommate that did not approve of the gay lifestyle because he felt it was wrong. Casey admits, though, that the student was outnumbered in his views. There is always potential to be greeted with disapproval when one considers that many LGBT people must come out on a daily basis. Chaz Ashley, a grad student, said that he comes out a lot because there is this idea that everyone is basically straight. Sometimes in conversation, people perceive him to be straight, and he has to tell them, I have a partner, and he's a guy, and that's how I come out daily. Those are unfair rules of the hide-and-seek game. But because of cultural rules, LGBT people are forced to hide in a metaphorical closet that can be damaging, but can also be a source of resilience and pride. Events like National Coming Out Day bring visibility to this relationship, the relationship between the LGBT persons and their own closets, Nielsen said. It's easy to write off a group that you don't see, but it's different when you can attach a name and a story to a face. That's why it's important.
Goodness gracious. So important. You know?
Especially in this election year.
Yeah, right.
The next story in our gay news segment here on Queer Public Radio tells us experts and political pundits say gay rights is not a deciding campaign issue. But for millions of LGBT Americans, what the candidates say they will or will not do in regard to their rights to marry and to equal workplace protections matters greatly. Here's where gay rights and gay marriage officially falls on each candidate's platform and what they say they'll do about it, accordingly to their websites. From Mitt Romney's official campaign website, he writes, as president, Romney will appoint an attorney general who will defend the Defense of Marriage Act, a law that defines marriage as the union between a man and a woman. Romney will also champion a federal marriage amendment to the Constitution defining marriage as between one man and one woman. From President Obama's official campaign website, these items were listed. First sitting president to publicly announce his support for marriage for same-sex couples. 2, he believes LGBT Americans should be treated fairly and equally. Number 3, Obama repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, so that gay and lesbian service members no longer have to lie about who they are in order to serve their country. Number 3, endorsed the Respect for Marriage Act, a proposed bill that would repeal the Defense of Marriage Act and require the federal government to recognize gay marriages. Number 4, signed the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act, expanding the U.S. hate crime law to include crimes motivated by the victim's actual or perceived gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. And finally, extended hospital visitation and medical decision-making rights to LGBT couples.
Woo!
I'm so excited.
Yeah, that was awesome. Goodness gracious. Well,
I just thought folks needed a little bit of a reminder because remember a couple of weeks ago we did lay out that whole list of everything that President Obama had done.
yes, quite a bit of it, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yes, it was about 4 or 5 pages worth of stuff.
Speaking of politics and voting and everything that's happening, I mean, it's just around the corner. I mean, I'm done. I already voted. I'm finished. I did it. I did it early. I don't want to wait. I don't want to deal with it. But, you know, lots of places, lots of things going on. Over in Maryland, the voters are voting on marriage equality, and the debate is becoming quite heated, especially when the anti-equality group Maryland Marriage Alliance recently held a quote-unquote town hall type meeting. Here's a short 4-minute, this is the entire sound, and I didn't listen to the whole thing, but I got a 4-minute clip for you here, and I think the audio was in a couple different portions, if I remember correctly. It was a little bit over an hour and 15 minutes or whatever, the whole video that I didn't watch. But I thought this little 4-minute takeaway here kind of says it all about what went on at the Maryland Marriage Alliance meeting in Maryland. Yeah, about marriage equality. Check it out.
I thought our God is righteous, perfect, all-knowing. So if he does what he does and it's righteous, anything less than that is not righteous. And thus, you probably have heard a word from the book of Proverbs that says, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach of any people. And we are rushing into sin with the force of law to change and redefine marriage. I'd rather follow what Peter said. He said something like, we must obey God rather than man. I also think is it really fair to have two people in society in a same-sex relationship? Well, that's already been established in our state. Right or wrong, it's already there. They already have benefits and things of that nature. We're talking about a standard that's been around thousands of years. From Africa, Asia, Europe, America. And we think we're that smart that we can change thousands of years of history? In fact, it goes beyond the years of history. It goes back to the beginning, where Jesus said, in the beginning, it was not so.
That's right.
He created male and female. By the way, in this whole discussion, to me, I understand the logical debates, and we need that. Whatever happened to something is right and something is wrong? You know what I'm saying? Whatever happened to we draw our line here?
Sure.
Whatever happened, since I'm a pastor up here, I think I can get away with that. Whatever happened to sin?
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Excellent.
It is not fair to open up a back door that will legalize prostitution.
How about that?
It's not fair to open up a back door that will possibly legalize bestiality.
Sure. That's right.
It's not fair
That's right.
to open up a back door that will possibly lead to polygamy. We want to change it. Once you start messing what God has established for us, we'll open up a door to redefine incest. Where do you stop? The scriptures in Leviticus 18:22, you know what that says. That a man is not to lay down with another man. If they do that, it's an abomination. But there is one verse I really wanted to drive home, and then I'll stop. But that's in Romans chapter 1. Mm-hmm. And it's the very last verse. As you know, Paul addresses this. Listen to the last verse. Mm-hmm. Knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death. Mm-hmm. Not only do the same, but watch this, for those who also approve of those who practice these things. If we don't vote against it, then we are approving these things that are worthy of death.
Wow. Preach. Wow.
Well, now, well, Kali, we have a unique perspective because Kali hasn't heard that before. What did you think about that, Kali?
Well, it's the same old thing that, has been said time and time again. And, I'm one that doesn't cherry pick the Bible for my own uses. And I think it's wrong for any preacher or, member of the clergy, I guess you would say, to tell his parishioners how to vote, for one thing. And for a second thing, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die with the man I love of almost 19 years. So, you know what I have to say to that? Kiss my patootie.
Patootie, yeah. Patootie. Anyway, as once again we see, as we have so many times before, that some people just don't understand that it's really not a religious argument. That your religion, really has no legal standing in a court of law. And we're seeing this marriage equality decision being argued in a court of law. So I just don't understand that these people are still running around Bible this, Bible that, Bible this, Bible that. It's a sin, blah 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 blah. When it has nothing to do with religion. It's a civil contract. It's granted by the government. When a preacher says, by the power vested in me by the state of blah blah blah, and I pronounce you man and wife, he's acting as an agent of the government, not as an agent of the church at that given moment. So I just think it's crazy, But this whole thing's religious argument thing, even if it were, there are in existence in this day and time, at this very time, on this very day, there are churches performing legal same-gender marriages in the United States. So I ask you, which church is right, quote unquote? It's really an easy and simple question, and can be best answered with another question, which goes like this: which church is expressing the most love? It just seems to me, after hearing the previous 4-minute audio clip, that maybe it's just me, I just didn't feel the love in that message. But, what's interesting enough, because, you heard me make my little comparison there to, there is churches in this day, on this day, in this time, right now, in this very moment, probably, that's having a same-gender wedding somewhere. So, rather than just take my word for it here, I think it's important for you to hear it from another. I mean, I'm an ordained clergyman myself. But that doesn't mean nothing, So let's hear it from some other ordained clergyman. And if I remember correctly, if you listen to the beginning, I think he says he also has a PhD over in Springfield, Missouri. While these guys are having their little town hall meeting, within a day or two over in Springfield, Missouri, another preacher was giving a speech there on this very same topic, and his words were quite different. Listen closely, especially to the ending.
Good evening. My name is the Reverend Dr. Phil Snyder. I was born and raised in Springfield, Missouri, and I stand before you this evening in support of this ordinance. I worry about the future of our city. Any accurate reading of the Bible should make it clear that gay rights goes against the plain truth of the Word of God. As one preacher warns, man in overstepping the boundary lines God has drawn by making special rights for gays and lesbians has taken another step in the direction of inviting the judgment of God upon our land. This step of gay rights is but another stepping stone toward the immorality and lawlessness that will be characteristic of the last days. This ordinance represents a denial of all that we believe in, and no one should force it on us. It's not that we don't care about homosexuals, but it's that our rights will be taken away. And unchristian views will be forced on us and our children, for we will be forced to go against our personal morals. Outside government agents are endeavoring to disturb God's established order. It is not in line with the Bible. Do not let people lead you astray. The liberals leading this movement do not believe the Bible any longer, but every good, substantial, Bible-believing, intelligent, Orthodox Christian can read the Word of God and know what is happening is not of God. When you run into conflict with God's established order, you have trouble. You do not produce harmony. You produce destruction and trouble, and our city is in the greatest danger that it has ever been in its history. The reason is that we have gotten away from the Bible of our forefathers. You see, the right of segregation, The right of segregation is clearly established by the Holy Scriptures, both by precept and example.
1 minute.
I'm sorry, I brought the wrong notes with me this evening. I've borrowed my argument from the wrong century. It turns out what I've been reading to you this whole time are direct quotes from white preachers from the 1950s and the 1960s, all in support of racial segregation. All I have done is simply take out the phrase racial integration and substituted it with the phrase gay rights. I guess the arguments I've been hearing around Springfield lately sounded so similar to these that I got them confused. I hope you will not make the same mistake. I hope you will stand on the right side of history. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Well, now, wasn't that interesting? Had a little twist at the end, didn't it? So in the end, to make a religious claim, one must ask the question, which religion? Or perhaps more precisely, which belief system? Because even different sects of the same religion may have differing beliefs. It just seems odd to me personally that some seem to ignore, according to Jesus, the one that they supposedly worship, that the second most important commandment, and that's what Jesus said, is the second most important commandment of them all, is to love thy neighbor as thyself. And I think that kind of sums up the whole religious argument when it don't got that kind of love in there. Enough said. Onward.
Well, Tom, we're going to go to a little bit more sports news that has a bit of a more positive scope here. There's really a discussion of gay rights in the National Basketball Association, where it is still difficult to imagine an openly gay athlete. That's not the case in the WNBA. For the first time ever, Minnesota Lynx star Simone Augustus is a WNBA champion, a two-time Olympic gold medalist, and an outspoken lesbian. She recently took a stand against a ballot measure in the state of Minnesota that could ban same-sex marriage in that state's constitution. She goes on to say, everyone thinks that the WNBA is one big lesbo party anyway, she said in an interview with the Associated Press. So I think the coming out process isn't as tough for us because people already expect it. But Augustus understands that NBA players would receive more scrutiny from the media and fans. the LSU alumnus and former two-time Wooten Award winner as the top college player in the country, is planning to have a wedding to her partner, Latalia Varner, but a Minnesota wedding could be in jeopardy. Understandably, Augustus wants to be married in Minnesota, where she now lives and where Varner is from. She helped bring the state a championship last year, and her Lynx are in the WNBA finals against the Indiana Fever. And I will preface this by saying that the WNBA finals are over and the Fever have won. However, I'm hoping that it passes, because then we're able to have a nice wedding here and actually be able to legally do it here instead of having to go a few hours away to Iowa or somewhere like that to have it done, Augustus says. You want to be able to do it in a city that, for one, has embraced me and been like my second home and is her home. This is where she's from, to be able to share a special moment in Minnesota history.
Oh, I hope it happens for her. See,
well, she is the first professional athlete to actually come out of the closet while she's still playing. So.
See, and now we get the rest of the story. The behind-the-scenes stuff. Kali's got all the juice, man.
Well, I don't know about all of it, but certainly a good portion of it.
On October 8, 1998, Judy Shepard and her husband Dennis received a phone call saying their son was in a coma at a hospital. They were on a work assignment in Saudi Arabia and immediately flew back to the States. In time, they would learn that their son was brutally attacked and murdered because he was gay. It changed their lives and turned them into unrelenting activists because they knew they could help so many others. They have had a huge impact, and they continue doing so today because still they know there is so much work to be done. Back in 2010, Judy Shepard spoke with Ellen DeGeneres on the 11th anniversary of Matthew's murder. Here's a 7-minute clip of that conversation.
11 years ago this week, people everywhere, including me, were shocked and saddened by the murder of Matthew Shepard, who was killed because he was gay. Since then, our next guest has worked tirelessly to promote equality and acceptance and has written a book, and it is called The Meaning of Matthew. Please welcome Matthew's mother, Judy Shepard.
Hi, Ellen.
I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Totally. Thanks so much.
Thank you. It is, I'm sure, very difficult, but please remind people, if they had not heard the story, what happened to Matthew.
Well, in October of 1998, Matthew accepted a ride from a couple of young men who proceeded to rob him and then beat him. They tied him to a fence outside of Laramie, Wyoming, and left him there to die. He was found 18 hours later, and he passed away 4 days later.
It was a story that, it's still hard for me.
It's hard for me, too.
Still hard. Because it was right after I came out. And I thought, people...
I want to share with you that Matt was so proud of you when you did. He called me and said, Mom, you can't believe it's happening.
It's one of the reasons I believe in doing it is just we need more examples. We need more people to go, well, they seem okay, and they're happy, and they found love, and they're successful, and it was just devastating when I heard about it. So Matthew was left tied to a fence post in freezing temperature, and someone found him the next morning, a sheriff, I think. And in your book, I think we all find out for the first time that he was not alone that night while he was dying. Tell people what happened.
When Officer Reggie Flutie, arrived at the scene a mountain biker had actually found him. He'd fallen and found Matt tied to the fence and called 911. And when she arrived on the scene, she saw that there had been a doe, a female deer, sitting in the bushes off to the side. She'd been nesting there, apparently through the night, next to Matt. And when she drove up, the doe ran off. So it really made us feel better that maybe Matt wasn't alone all that horrible night.
Amazing, amazing. And we met shortly after that. They were all trying to raise awareness of these hate crimes that were happening.
Right.
And it's been 11 years, and you have been. This changed your life. I mean, you didn't do this before. You were close with your son.
Right.
He was a good friend to you, but this all of a sudden changed.
Well, yeah, I became sort of the spokeswoman for the cause. We thought people would recognize Matt's name and hear what we had to say and listen to us. Maybe we could change hearts and minds.
And I think that you have, and I think you have stories of how from 11 years ago you starting to speak, what some examples of acceptance now?
I started speaking at colleges, and I would see young people afterwards who were, their eyes were so filled with fear and trepidation for their future. Now when I meet those kids, they're just so empowered, and they know what they're being denied, and they know how to get it. It's just so encouraging. It's changed so much at the grassroots level.
And I hear that a story about a young man trying to tell his mother.
Yeah, this is the best story. It just shows you how far we've come. He was out in college, but not out at home, and he decided one weekend he was going to drive home. So he drove to his folks' house. He pulled in the driveway, left the car running, went inside. His mom was on the sofa knitting or something, and his dad was downstairs. He came in the house and said, "Mom, there's something I have to tell you." And she said, "What would that be?" And he said, "I'm gay." And she stopped knitting, and she yelled down the stairs, "I win the bet." I love that story. I love that story.
I am wearing one of these erase hate bracelets. Tell everybody what this is and what we're doing to try to help spread the word.
Well, it's part of the wristband craze, I guess. It's the MatthewShepard.org website on one side, and the other side says Erase Hate. It's in the foundation colors, which is purple, the Matthew Shepard Foundation. And we've distributed over 100,000 of these wristbands across the country and actually all over the world. People send in internationally and ask for them. And it's just to remind people that we can make a conscious decision to erase hate. And the world would be a much better place if we could do that.
It sure would. Sure would. All right, well, everybody in the audience, you're all getting a wristband. And we have some very exciting news that, and go to our website if you're interested also in the bracelet and helping the Matthew Shepard Foundation. But we have some exciting news that really just happened right before you walked out. One of the things we were trying to do after Matthew was killed was to try to pass a hate crime law. And basically, there are a lot of states that don't have hate crime laws or didn't. Explain the difference. I think people don't understand a crime is a crime, but it's not. A hate crime is different in the way that...
Well, the intention of the hate crime is to put fear into the heart of the community, not just the victim or the victim's family, but to scare the entire community or try to bring them in line with whatever the hater thinks they should be doing or shouldn't be doing.
Right. So well, there are a lot of hate crimes, as we hear about all the time. So you have been trying, to get this attention, and tell people we just found out right before you walked out.
Yeah, we just found out that the part of the bill that will increase existing hate crime laws and now protect sexual orientation, gender, disability, has been passed on the House floor and will be going to the Senate.
Really great.
This is the farthest we've come.
Yeah. It really is, because when we were standing on the steps in Washington after this happened, trying to get Wyoming, and up until today, 11 years later, Wyoming did not pass it.
No.
Unbelievable after this. So we are trying to make this a federal law everywhere, which, I mean, hate is just, there's no excuse for it, with anything. So the book is called Meaning of Matthew. A portion of the proceeds go to the Matthew Shepard Foundation. It's in bookstores now. Everybody, audience, is also getting a copy.
Aren't you jealous? I'm jealous. I'm jealous I wasn't in the audience to get all that free stuff,
I have read the book, though. It's very moving.
Oh, have you really?
Yes, it's a very moving account of the events.
Oh, wow. That's too cool. Congratulations on that.
Yeah.
So, I just want to let you know, folks, if you're anywhere around Cherry Hill, New Jersey, yeah, that's why I played that sound clip for you. Because if you were around Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and you're listening to our show instead of listening to her, yeah, what? Yeah. Judy Shepard spoke in Cherry Hill, New Jersey tonight during our show. Yeah, she started speaking at, I think, 7 p.m. there. So who knows, maybe an hour before our show, actually, because I think they're on East Coast time. But chances are she's done by now, but maybe if you hurry down there real fast, you know. She's at the Jewish Community Relations Council Center located at 1301 Singledale Road. Yeah, if you hurry, maybe she'll be doing some PR work after her speech. I think it's interesting to note that this event has two primary sponsors, the Jewish Community Relations Council, or JCRC, of Southern New Jersey, and the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League. Because neither of these organizations would be considered a quote-unquote mainstream LGBT organization, and so could technically be labeled ally organizations, I would guess. But when you think about it a bit more, it's so much more, because that's part of the problem with labeling, that once you label something, it's quote-unquote contained, because a label has rules or regulations or stipulations or at least boundaries of some type. So in a way, by simply placing a label on it, we have given it a definition. And we did all this based on our opinion, of course, because we all know that one label doesn't fit all. So 5 different people might have 5 different labels for the same thing or same person. So let's say that person A thinks that person Q is a queer, and person B thinks that person Q is a screaming queen. Some say, well, they're both queers. But I'm here to tell you that's not true. Because I've met guys that I thought were borderline screaming queens, and they were straight. And that's the truth. I swear to God. I realize that's a rather simplistic example, but the point is that there are distinctions to each opinion. You know, that each person might have a slightly altered list of rules for their labels. Their boundaries might be different, you know, because it's all based on opinion. So on the example above, one initially assumes that both person A and person B are correct, because obviously person Q must be a homosexual in both those cases. But as we've shown and just proven, and it's a fact, that's not necessarily so. The bottom line to all this posturing is the fact that we all have many biased opinions and thoughts. We are taught such things our entire life. We definitely aren't born with the vast majority of them. And we might be born with a dislike for certain foods or other such things, but we're not born with a dislike towards certain groups of people. Babies are not born disliking homosexuals. They are taught that.
Can I get an amen?
Amen!
Well, Tom, I think it's time we wrap this puppy up.
Already? I was just starting to get warmed up. Son of a gun.
So I, Kelly, and I'm sure I can speak for Tom, we want to say thank you for spending some time with us here on QueerPublicRadio.com, and we hope that you've enjoyed our 4th installment of Two Gay Tuesdays with Tom and Cully. And remember, you know, while the coming out process is difficult, know that there are people out here that do support you, because as it's important to also remember, we are all part of one human family. And, of course, that means that Each and every one of us is a brother and sister. Well, no matter what our race, our color, our creed, our sexual orientation, or our views, we are all one human family. Mahalo and aloha.
Tell your other half that I said hola too, you know, or aloha. Excuse me, aloha. We'll check y'all next time. Thanks again for spending some time with us here on QPR. Bye-bye for now. See you, Colleen.
Aloha.
We'll leave the light on for you.